to drop that down. And probably going to lose 20 to 30 minutes. Very shortly, probably after the next tar stage. We're going to have to do it, otherwise I don't think we'll get to the end, because it's really severely, I mean 4K is pumping out a litre of oil.
The route would take competitors to Mpumalanga and Swaziland, with 14 special stages in the Centurion, Witbank, Hendrina, Ermelo and Amsterdam areas before the overnight stop in the Esselwini Valley of the tiny mountain kingdom. First on the road, the Castrol Toyota Conquest pair of Serge Damso and Vito Bonafide, in joint three-way lead overall after the previous day's Samran Super Special. Started by Centurion's charming mare, Rita Okamp, Habak and Judd followed Damso and Bonafide to the start control of Stage 2, a 4.5-kilometre all-tar spectator stage in the city centre. Rally crews generally dislike the short spectator stages, as they virtually never get out of second gear and have to throw their cars around tight corners, which can be hard on gearboxes and brakes. But spectators love it, as they can see the cars and crews in close-up action, and the sight and sound of a full-blown rally car driven by masters of their craft is something to behold. Joint leaders of the Stannic Rally of South Africa were Paolo Piazzamuso and Nick Haddon in the Sasol Ford Escort. Surprisingly, the winners of the Samran Super Special, reigning champions Dan Habak and Douglas Judd, found themselves in 5th position after picking up a 10-second time penalty for clocking in late at the final time control. This uncharacteristic lapse in concentration turned what should have been a 3-second lead into a 7-second deficit. But the KwaZulu-Natal crew were not going to let this upset them, and they went as hard as they could from the start. Piazzamuso and Haddon were also pushing the Sasol Ford Escort as hard as they could to try and pull away from the Works Toyota crew and privateers Chad van der Walt and Cindy Harding in their GNT Volkswagen Golf. The other crew in joint first position overnight. The Sasol Ford Escort pairing were lying 3rd overall and 2nd in Class A8 in the Stannic National Championship, and were looking at laying a solid foundation for their onslaught on Damso and Bonafide's leading positions in the Drivers' and Navigators' Championships. Despite setting a time of just 1 second slower than Habak and Judd the previous evening, Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley in the team Total Conquest had a lot of time to make up following their penalty. The car was still not handling the way they wanted. Joint overnight leaders Chad van der Walt and Cindy Harding were equally determined in their GNT Golf. This had all the makings of a high drama. Jan Smot's house in Irene, a quaint little suburb southeast of Centurion. Stage 3 of the rally was named after Cornwall Hill, with the South African Air Force's Ad Astra Eagle soaring into the sky. Piazzamuso and Haddon were still pushing their Sasol Ford Escort RS2000, having finished the previous stage right up there with Damso and Habak. Pretoria-based crew Barry Grobbelaar and Mike Burrows were trailing Class A7 leaders Van der Walt and Harding by 8 seconds after the first 2 stages and took a second back on Stage 3. Zimbabweans Kruger and Rowley in the 4-wheel drive Castrol Toyota Conquest struggled in the tight spectator stage in Centurion, dropping 18 seconds down the field after lying 2nd overall overnight. The battle for Class A6 honours was hotting up, as Fecken and Lukowitz in the Dunair Conquest traded victories in Stages 1 and 2 with Team Total's Damso and Aries. After Stage 3, Fecken was leading by a second. Reigning African champions Santvan Singh from Zambia and Surinder Tati from Kenya were taking it easy in their Group N Subaru, knowing full well that their car wasn't designed for short sprint stage events, but rather for longer marathons. Hannes Hrobler and Dave McGregor in their Bridgestone Nissan Sentra had established an early lead in Class N3, the standard 2-litre cars, by taking all 3 stages in their class. Dicky Moreira and Danny Duval in their Toyota Corolla seemed the only likely challengers, trailing the Nissan crew by 8 seconds before Stage 3. Here they dropped another 10 seconds. Early Class N3 challengers Cliff Blackman and Johan Klaassen in the Team Total Nissan Sentra had dropped 12 seconds to Hrobler and McGregor in Stage 2 and lost another 11 in Stage 3. There was a lot of interest in how the Group N cars would cope with the strenuous demands placed on them in South Africa's premier event. No problems so far, though, for the championship leaders Sanders and Hooper. Plenty of problems, unfortunately, for Piazzamuso and Haddon, though, who brought their Sasol Ford Escort to the service points with no sound coming from the engine. Would this be the end of their effort?
A bit of panic stations for the Sasol Ford team. We had a fan belt jump off a couple of k's from the end of the stage, and we've had a fairly long open section, and the result of that, the water pump doesn't turn and the car's overheated, so we burst a water pipe in the process as well.
In the Stannic South African Rally Championship, teams are allowed only half an hour lateness for each leg of the event, which is in accordance with standards laid down by the FIA. With the complicated layout of the engine bay and plumbing, the hard-working Sasol Ford service crew found that they'd need an hour to repair the damage, which would see them time-barred. Their rally was run. Bronkhorstspruit, halfway between Pretoria and Witbank, and the die-hard rally fans gathered for the next spectator stage at Kultura Park. Just more than 6 kilometres long, the unfolding drama of the Stannic Rally of South Africa would continue there as the teams continued their quest for glory. After 4 competitive stages, Castrol Toyota crew Serge Damso and Vito Bonafide had a tenuous 2-second lead over Volkswagen's Jan Havik and Douglas Judd. And with the demise of the Sasol Ford, the battle would be fought between these two pairs. The KwaZulu-Natal team had gradually clawed their way back up the leaderboard after their overnight penalty, taking 4 seconds off Damso and Bonafide in both stage 3 and 4. Their car was going well, and they could smell the chance of taking the lead. Lawrence and Paisley were still struggling with their oil leak problem, but the team total crew was setting very competitive times in their conquest. Just down the N4 to Witbank next, before the route continued to the southeast on the way to the Swaziland border. The Eastern Escarpment is favourite rally country, with many good stages to be found in the area. Stage 6 at Wolverkrans, and Chad van der Walt and Sydney Harding had moved into 3rd position overall and were still leading Class A7 in their GNT VW Golf. They were some 24 seconds behind Havik and Judd, who were now jointly in the lead with Damso and Bonafide. Second and A7 were Grobbelaar and Burrows in the team total Golf, some 16 seconds behind Van der Walt and Harding, but in 5th overall behind Lawrence and Paisley. Zimbabweans Hannes Kruger and Tony Rowley were gradually dropping back in their 4-wheel drive Castrol Toyota Conquest in another car that's primarily designed for the longer marathon events which form part of the African Championship. In Class A6, Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz in the Dunair Conquest had dropped to 2nd behind JP Damso and Pierre Aris, but a determined effort in the Wolverkrans leg saw them winning the stage in their class. Damso and Aris in the team total Conquest carried a lead of 8 seconds into the stage, but a spin saw them losing 23 seconds to Fecken and Lukowitz. Former rally and off-road champion Hannes Grobbelaar and Dave McGregor in the Bridgestone Nissan Sentra were beginning to dominate the Group N battle, pulling away from their nearest Class N3 rivals, Cliff Blackman and Johan Klaassen. In Class N2, Diffie Moreira and Danny Duval in the Goodwood Auto-Electrical Toyota Corolla were leading Dean Sanders and Graham Hooper by a mere 11 seconds. Good communication between driver and navigator is vital, but it sometimes falls by the wayside in the heat of the moment. Second behind Grobbelaar and McGregor at this stage, Blackman and Klaassen in the team total Nissan Sentra dropped another 12 seconds, putting them 50 seconds down. The service area after Wolverkrans, and despite appearances to the contrary, Jan Havik did not have a trouble-free run, even though he completed the stage only 1 second slower than Damso.
It looks like we've got an intermittent electrical problem, and then so it switched off completely and the car stopped, and then we had to restart the thing, and it looks like 20 seconds went out the window there, but the car otherwise going very well, so if that problem goes away now, then it'll be a good rally. We'll have a good dice for Serge.
With virtually nothing to choose between the front runners in Class A6, as well as in the battle for 4th overall, Jean-Pierre Damso was not overly concerned at being behind Jürgen Fecken.
So far it's been going well. Me and Fecken and Barry are quite close, the 3 of us. But it's a long way from the end. There's another 3 days left. So we're just going to take it a bit easier now and just try and get to the end on Saturday afternoon.
Ermelo, a dusty town in the south of Mpumalanga, which traditionally hosts part of the Rally of South Africa. The event has often started here in the past, before organisers decided to move the start to the Gauteng area in a successful attempt to attract more spectators. Still in their original starting position, Damso and Bonafide had slipped to 2nd overall behind Havik and Judd when they started stage 8, after losing 12 seconds to the Volkswagen crew in the previous stage at Hendrina. Having fixed their electrical problem, the reigning champions were determined to start building a lead over the Castrol Toyota crew. After taking an 11-second lead after the previous stage, Havik and Judd took another 2 in 8. Up in 3rd overall now, having overtaken Van der Walt and Harding, Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley were pushing their team total Toyota Conquest hard, despite various worrying mechanical problems. A nice full crowd packed the grandstand at the Ermelo Showgrounds, watching Chad van der Walt and Cindy Harding in the GNT VW Golf, 5th overall, and now only 3 seconds ahead of Grobbelaar and Burrows. They'd lost 10 seconds in all in 2 stages, struggling with the pace notes. Hannes Kruger and Tony Rowley from Zimbabwe in the ex-Damso 4x4 Castrol Toyota Conquest, who were not eligible for South African Championship points because their car did not conform to local regulations, were making a bit of a comeback, moving into 4th overall. The Dunair Toyota Conquest of Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz had a 33-second advantage over Damso and Aries going into stage 8. Damso and Aries, second in Class A6 and 8th overall, lost some 18 seconds to Fecken and Lukowitz because of a spin in stage 7 and had to make amends. Stage 9, a 14-kilometre stage in the Panbult area of southern Mpumalanga, saw African champions Santvan Singh and Surinder Tati in their Group N Subaru still on song. The affable pair love coming to South Africa. In a remarkable performance, the standard Bridgestone Nissan Sentra of Hannes Grobler and Dave McGregor had moved up into the top 10 with a comfortable margin in Class N3. Diffie Moreira and Danny Duval were not so happy in their Goodwood Auto electrical Toyota Corolla, running in Class N2, complaining of a down-on-power engine. They also picked up a 10-second penalty for clocking in late after stage 8. Things are never quiet inside a rally car.
900, caution medium right, caution medium right.
Second in Class N3 at this stage, behind Krobler and McGregor, team total pair Cliff Blackman and Johan Claassen were also doing exceptionally well. Class N2 championship leaders Dean Sanders and Graham Hooper were pushing hard to catch Moreira and Duval, but intercom problems made communication difficult. Some welcome service time for running repairs after stage 9, and while Group N front-runner Hannes Grobler phoned home, we asked his navigator, Dave McGregor, how things were going for them.
I think our strategy was to, on these smoother stages before we crossed the border, to build up a little bit of a buffer so that we could fish and sort of wheel the guys in and out. And we've got about a minute buffer on the Group N class and about 2 minutes in our specific category, so we're quite comfortable at this stage. Strategy is working, but there's still 2 long, hard days to go, and a night.
Stage 11, a short 5-kilometre stage at Ravumia near Amsterdam, and Damso and Bonafide were worried. They'd broken a tie rod near the end of the previous stage and lost a further 9 seconds to Havoc and Judd. No such problems for the Volkswagen crew, even though Damso and Bonafide took a second off them in stage 11. Lawrence and Paisley were struggling with a number of mechanical problems, and although their stage times were good, they'd taken a lot of lateness, which would drop them in the order. Chad van der Walt and Sidney Harding had fallen to second in A7, 3 seconds behind Krobler and Burrows after the previous stage, but the team total crew couldn't capitalise on this in stage 11, suffering terminal suspension problems and retiring from the event. This would do their championship hopes no good at all. After the 12th stage, the service crews had another chance to tend to the niggling problems that beset any rally car as they came to the end of the second leg of the Stannic. We caught up with a concerned Serge Damso, now 49 seconds behind the leaders.
We've got some problem with the dampers again, so we'd like to just change some dampers and see if we can get it right.
Same as in Natal?
Same, more or less the same we had in Natal, yes.
But in the Volkswagen camp, no such worries as the kit car, originally designed for the Safari Rally in Kenya, had been behaving impeccably. Driver Jan Habik was relaxed in the knowledge that he'd built up a handy lead. After crossing the border into Swaziland, the competitors tackled the first stage in the famous Usutu forests. The Castrol Toyota team's woes weren't over, though, with Damso and Bonafide dropping a further 6 seconds over the 9-kilometre stage to Habik and Judd. Night rallying isn't for mere mortals. The Works Volkswagen crew continued to pull away as the night wore on. Chad van der Walt and Cindy Harding had found their feet and were going along nicely in their Class A7 GNT Volkswagen Golf after the demise of Krobler and Burrows. But they had one problem. The Class A6 leaders were breathing down their necks. Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz in the Dunair Toyota Conquest had opened up a substantial lead in A6 and were getting closer and closer to the Volkswagen. In the Group N battle, Hannes Grobler and Dave McGregor had lost some time on Diffie Moreira and Danny Duval after they had to make do with an intermittent problem with their spots, but they still held a substantial lead as the day drew to a close. At the overnight halt in the Ezelwini Valley after 15 stages, Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz were in a remarkable 3rd overall in the Dunair Toyota Conquest after a fast and consistent drive.
Yeah, it's a long way to go. We just want to stay there, not lose any time. So we're not going to pull out any aerobics. Just stay on the road.
The standings at the end of day 2 made for some interesting reading. Habak and Judd had made more than a minute over Damso and Bonafide, while only 10 seconds separated the next 3 teams. Fecken and Lukowitz had more than 2 minutes over Damso and Aries in A6. Van der Walt and Harding were leading A7, and Hrobler and McGregor Group N in 7th overall. Esquezelwini Valley, which for more than 20 years has played host to the Stannic Rally of South Africa. Its convention centre and leisure facilities acts as a magnet for foreign visitors throughout the year, and it's ideally situated as the venue for rally headquarters. Day 2 dawned bright and sunny, and the crews enjoyed a pleasant chat before the serious work of tackling the 13 stages that lay ahead.
Well, we've got 1 minute 16 seconds on the second competitor, so you know, our plan was really to get to Swaziland with a minute lead, and 1 minute 16 is close enough to the plan for us. And for the rest of the day, I think we'll keep pushing quite hard, and we'll just see what the tactics will be from the Toyota team.
Leg 4 and 5 would take the competitors from Malkerns in the east to Bunya in the west and Mhlambanyatsi in the north, before returning to rally headquarters for the overnight halt. Stage 16, the first of the day, and Jan Habak and Douglas Judd in the Works Volkswagen Golf wanted to consolidate their lead from as early as possible. The Stannic is notorious for mechanical failures right to the end of the event, and enough time to do proper repairs can make the difference. At the same time, Serge Damso and Vito Bonafide in the Works Castrol Toyota Conquest wanted to exert maximum pressure on the leading crew to try to catch up. The Class A6 Dunnair Toyota Conquest crew of Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz had many people talking the previous night.
We're lying third overall. The car is handling very well. We've got 2 guys pushing in our necks. I think between us and the 5th guy is only 10 seconds. So we have to push hard, but stay on the road.
Just 6 seconds behind, but leading Class A7, the GNT Golf crew of Chart van der Walt and Cindy Harding had everything to gain by trying to catch Fecken and Lukowitz, and they were looking good. Fifth overnight, the Zimbabweans Hannes Kruger and Tony Rowley in the 4-wheel drive Castrol Toyota Conquest didn't start their day very well by dropping almost a minute from the leaders. The top 4 Group N competitors were all in the top 10 overnight, led by Hannes Hrobler and Dave McGregor in 7th.
Yeah, we're very happy with our position, but the meat of the rally is only today. And it's still long. It's basically a whole national today. And tomorrow it's still also over 100 kilos. So we'll see how it goes today, and we'll just try and stay ahead of the Group Ns.
81 seconds behind, and also second in Class N3 were Cliff Blackman and Johan Klaassen in the Team Total Nissan Sentra, with Class N2 leaders in 9th overall position, Diffie Moreira and Danny Duval in the Goodwood Auto Electrical Toyota Corolla. 10th overall and second in Class N2, Team Total's Dean Sanders and Graham Hooper, but unfortunately not see the end of Stage 17 after a broken side shaft put an end to their rally. Die-hard rally spectators love coming on to Stannic, and Santvan Singh and Surinder Tati in their Group N Subaru, lying 12th overall, and Artie Reinecker and Robin Houghton in the Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser in 14th made it worth their while. Privateer Nico Higgs and veteran rally navigator Menno Havalar in their Class A6 Toyota Conquest were 4th in class and 15th overall, chasing class championship leaders Craig Trott and Brian Duncan. At the service halt after Stage 18, Cliff Blackman was optimistic.
Yeah, today is we made it through the night stages. Today is a day I think where we have to shuffle for position. Group N at the moment very close, so you can't give an inch. So one wrong turn and then you battle like mad to get back. So the idea is just to stay on the road and see if we can't make a bit of a gap between the N2s, because they're very hard to get away from at the moment.
Making a welcome return to rallying, Big Skalkberger, along with Thilo van Vesterhagen, had brought his privately entered Toyota Conquest to 16th overall and 3rd in Class N2.
Well, we're starting off reasonably early this morning, and the roads are very rough, and we're just hanging in there just to get to the end. It's still a long day ahead, and then it's still tomorrow as well.
Car holding up all right.
The car's going very, very well.
After taking 37 seconds off Serge Damso in the first 3 stages, Habak pulled out all the stops in the longest stage of the day of more than 30 kilometres. In the end, the gap between the two works teams widened by another minute and 13 seconds. Damso and Bonafide were also going all out, but niggling problems were hampering their progress. Fecken and Lukowitz in the Dunair Toyota Conquest had since slipped to 21 seconds behind Van der Vault and Harding, and this little indiscretion cost them another full minute, with Zimbabweans Hannes Kripke and Flambanyatsi before ending the day at Esselwini again. Habak and Judd in the Works Volkswagen Golf had built up a commanding lead of some 4 minutes over Damso and Bonafide. The narrow forest stages called for the utmost concentration, and even with such a huge lead, they couldn't afford to relax for a minute. Damso and Bonafide were battling with some niggling suspension problems in their Castrol Toyota Conquest and dropped another 12 seconds to the leaders in the first 2 stages after lunch. Fecken and Lukowitz were down to 4th in the Dunair Toyota Conquest behind Chad van der Vault and Cindy Harding in the GNT Volkswagen Golf, who was still leading Class A7. Unbeknown to many of the front-runners, though, another factor was coming into play. And while Van der Vault and Harding were looking good for a 3rd overall, Etienne Lawrence had an overnight time penalty reversed, which put him right amongst the leaders on the overall standings. JP Damso and Pierre Aris in the team Total Conquest were still running steadily, but kept on dropping back in relation to Fecken and Lukowitz in A6 and were falling into the clutches of the Group N cars. A change in the Group N order saw Team Total Nissan Sentra crew, Cliff Blackman and Johan Klaassen in front, ahead of earlier leaders Grobler and McGregor, who lost 3 minutes because of a puncture. Initially starting 11th overall, but rapidly making up positions, were Team Total Class A8 Toyota Conquest crew, Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley, who leapfrogged to 5th behind Fecken and Lukowitz after getting back their penalties. Punctures were starting to become the scourge of mainly the Group N competitors, and new leaders Blackman and Klaassen were not spared the ordeal either.
Gremlin finally hit us, and I think we've all had punches, and suddenly it was our turn, and had to stop and change it. Luckily we managed to finish the stage though first, so I think probably on the stage time we've lost about a minute, Johannes. So it looks like he's really right behind us now, so hope we don't have any more problems.
Apart from some suspension and electrical problems and a broken side shaft during the afternoon, which were all seen to without losing too much time, the GNT Technologies crew of Chad van der Vault and Cindy Harding were in a relatively safe 3rd position behind Damso and Bonafide and Habak and Judd. 4th still were Fecken and Lukowitz, ahead of Lawrence and Paisley, Blackman and Klaassen, Damso and Aris, Grobler and McGregor, and Morer and De Waal. Night fell over the Mountain Kingdom, and for most crews, it would be a question of surviving until the overnight halt. Stage 27 was a repeat of the long 30-kilometre stage of the morning, and Habak took almost 3.5 minutes off Damso. Still in 4th position, but closing in on Van der Vault and Harding, was the Dunair Conquest of Jürgen Fecken and Dave Lukowitz. The GNT Golf had been suffering from an intermittent misfire, and the Cape Town crew had been giving away more than 30 seconds in the last 2 stages to their pursuers. Some more problems with punctures saw Grobler and McGregor drop down to 3rd in Group N, behind Blackman and Klaassen and Morer and De Waal. Team Total Nissan Sentra pair, Blackman and Klaassen, were involved in an exciting battle with Damso and Aris and the Land Cruiser of Reinecker and Houghton just ahead of them. The reigning South African off-road champions were up to an incredible 7th overall, Reinecker and Houghton finding that the big Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser was ideally suited for the conditions.
The rough stuff definitely suits us. Not so much, I think, in the speed
in a vehicle that showed it could handle both the rough stuff and the high speeds. But closing in on the off-roaders were Group N leaders Cliff Blackman and Johan Klaassen in the Team Total Nissan Sentra, who'd been benefiting from the tyre misfortunes of Grobler and McGregor. Leading Class N2 runners, Diffie Morer and Donny De Waal in the Goodwood Auto-Electrical Toyota Corolla were also still ahead of the early Group N leaders. This was turning out to be the battle to watch as Grobler and McGregor in the Bridgestone Nissan Sentra set off in an effort to get back into the lead, at least of the Group N competitors. But their tyre woes were not over, as yet another puncture slowed them down, costing them more time and putting their 10th